Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle. This is episode 315. Hopefully, you guys have had a great week. We've got one heck of an amazing guest for you tonight. You guys have seen this guy around the community for years. If you have not grown some of this gear, you are missing out. Of course, this is Patrick from Heroes of the Farm. How you doing, Patrick? You want to tell us how you're doing and where we can find you on social media and such?
My name is Patrick Pooler. Doing wonderful this evening. I'm Heroes of the Farm on Instagram. Based out of Sandy, Oregon. Been cultivating cannabis for 16 years. Been smoking for 2+ decades, and cannabis has definitely been woven through the fabrics of all of my life.
Man, so welcome to the show. And like I was saying a little bit before the show, I've got a ton of respect for you. I have grown out, good fair amount of your strains. It depends on how you look, how many, but I think I had 6 or 7 there. That's a pretty good start on a library, anywho.
Yeah,
So
definitely that's a solid start, and you've definitely grown out a lot of my very original gear, which that was the foundation that started it all. So appreciative for the support, and I've always loved kind of sharing genetics and watching other people cultivate and sharing the experience.
So, what ultimately got you started with cannabis, if you don't mind me asking? Might as
Well,
well
I'm the
start
youngest.
from the get.
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And definitely at a young age, looking back at it, I would not recommend kids that age smoking pot. But started smoking pot the first time I was like 10, and then I started probably consistently smoking pot when I was like 11 and 12. And it was just one of those things that I had older brothers and my older brothers' friends, and there was some Mexican brick swag that we smoked out of a can, and I liked the way that it made me feel. And we started, every weekend getting, 10 sacks and seeing what we could do with that. And by 8th grade, I started, kind of just, my brother went to college and he's 4 years older than me. So I kind of picked up where he left off selling pot. And it was kind of my way to connect with everyone in high school. I was more of a skater, snowboarder, but I was friends with everybody. I didn't care if you were in the band or you were a jock or you were snowboarding or skating or rollerblade, whatever. It was cannabis has always been the kind of the thing that breaks boundaries between people. And it was a way that, from a young age, I made extra money. And, I started off just trying to smoke for free. I mean, when I started, I was using a little, metal hand scale, and, weed was super expensive, for good weed, and good weed back then for $60 was really, looking at what's today was not good weed. A lot of it was, Canadian work, Mexican swag. There was kind of, we would refer to it as like dank grandmas because it was coming from the attic and it smelled like mothballs, kind of wet and moist. Then things like, yeah, you get your Northern Lights and like some of the stuff by name, but when I was in high school, the name really didn't matter. It was kind of, we are just trying to get high. And then, snowboarding became a large part of my life in high school. I've always been into mountain sports. But I decided after high school, I went out to Windell Snowboard Camp, and after 10 days of being in Oregon, I was literally at a keg party with snowboarders that I was watching, professional snowboarders that I was watching as a senior in high school. I'm 18 and I'm drinking beers in Southeast Portland with them because of Windell's adult camp. And we're just hitting huge jumps. It was, what would have been June 13th, I got up here. 2004 was the first time I came to Oregon by myself. After 10 days, I came home and weed was cheap. One of the counselors was like, "Hey, we're not at camp." He's like, "You guys want any weed?" I was like, "How much for an eighth?" And he's like, $40. And it was some chronic. And I bought the whole ounce, and I was only there for like 7 days. He's like, "You don't need that much weed." I was like, "Don't worry about me, bro. Give me that weed." And so I came home and basically told my mom I wanted to move, and it took me like 6 months to get. Basically, I had to go to community college to get my grades up because high school was not my thing. I didn't really give a shit about it. I wasn't really interested in it. It wasn't that I wasn't intelligent; it's just I wasn't interested. So you find things out about yourself later. When you're interested, you can do a lot of great things, and when you're not, it's learning isn't that fun if you're like, why am I doing this, and don't see the point. But I got basically my grades up and got into Portland State. And I went to Portland State for environmental studies for 2 years, while at the same time, when I got out here, I wanted to grow pot. I had brought some seeds from some, probably not that great of weed from the East Coast. And I popped them on a balcony of an apartment that I was living in. And then eventually I got a little LED light and I threw it in one of the cubby holes. And so I went to Everybody's Garden Center and I bought my first 1,000 watt light and had my first zeros at the farm moment because I had like $700, and back then a core and coil ballast was like 250, 300. A bulb was $120, the hood. So you spend $700 real quick and not get a lot, especially quality material back then. And I told the guy, I had to walk into my closet and then crawl through a hole, and then it opened up in this little cubby hole that was a 6x4x6. And he's like, well, what do you want? And I was like, well, I don't know, the best light possible. And he sold me 1,000 watt bulb ballast and told me nothing about ventilation or heat. And I plugged this thing in and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh, this is the brightest thing, and went downstairs and had some drinks and came back like 3 hours later and the cubby hole was like 120 degrees. My plants were not stoked. So that was my very first little experience. But after that, we were probably 4 months into living in Oregon, and we found the house that I refer to as 8541. I named a strain after it. It was a 4-bedroom house. Me and two of my homies, or actually three of my homies, we moved into it, and I started basically growing weed with one light in the bathroom. Then one light became two. Then a roommate moved out. I took his bedroom. It became four. And then I moved into another bedroom when another roommate moved out. And then I blew up the whole master bedroom, became 9 lights. By the time I was done living in that house, it had 2 living rooms. The one when you walked in had a couch and a TV. The other one I was living in next to a 4x8 veg tent, and every single bedroom in the house was blown up. And I was just I had an absent landlord that lived in Los Altos. That in 4 years she never came to the house, and I was paying $950 every year. She bumped my rent up, $50 to $100, and I never complained because what I was doing. And I lived in this little cool cul-de-sac of Southwest 37th Avenue, 8541. And that was in Southwest Portland, over kind of by John's Market area. And that house is really like what built a lot of my foundation. But what really built my foundation was I was always interested in finding the right hydro store to get information from. Because for me personally, I'm not an internet guy. I told myself years ago when I was younger, which was dumb as shit, like, I'm going to be the last generation that doesn't use a computer. Like, fuck video games, fuck a computer. Like, it just wasn't my thing. I was more active and outside and snowboarding and skating, and like to have my hands on things. But I was looking for a shop that I could find information at, and I got kicked out of a lot of different shops because back then, if you mentioned cannabis or you overspoke your bounds, they were like, get out of here. So I got kicked out of Everybody's Garden Center and a couple other ones. And that's when I went to Northern Light Garden, and I met the owner, Trace Myers. And, there's a few instances and meetings of people that change your life. And that was one of them. And I started shopping there, and he was always very encouraging. And then I literally started moving soil there for free. And I got an employee discount, which back then I was saving 40% off on all my gear. And I would come in and I would move truckloads of Fox farm soil by hand off the truck, one at a couple at a time, and then stack them to the ceiling. And then I'd save a shitload of money. And eventually they hired me at minimum wage, $8.17 back then. And I wasn't there for the paycheck. I was there for the knowledge, the information, the exposure, and the discount. So by the time I got that job, I was running probably like 9 lights, and the owner, Trace, you know, he was 20 years older than me, and he hooked me up. It was basically like, look, if you're gonna, you know, I was growing completely illegal at the time, and he's like, if you're gonna work here, we got to get you cards. So he hooked me up with Mamas and Kurt. That was one of his customers. I learned about, you know, how to stack cards and got a lawyer, John C. Lucy at the time. That was, he's a criminal defense attorney. So of course he's like, yeah, you can do that. He wants to defend me on the back end, but you know, it was encouraging. And, you know, then from there, I worked my way out, you know, up into management over a 4-year period. And then I got recruited out by Advanced Nutrients. And that's when, you know, my world really changed. Would have been in 2008. So what, I've been 23 years old. I went from making like 17 grand a year and snowboarding like 60 to 120 days a year. 121 days was my best season, but 60, 70 days was like my average snowboarding. So, you know, I was minoring in school, majoring in snowboarding, and really my mom had no idea, but I was working at a fucking hydro store, you know, growing and selling pot. And so when I got the opportunity to work for Advanced, you know, we made a sales commission, and it was 2008. They were the first company back then, before they blew up and just shit got awry and away from them. You know, they were the first company to say we're for cannabis, and that was the year that they flew the massive Nug banner over the hydro event in San Francisco, and they were really fucking cool. And the guy that was my old sales rep ended up being Dave Pratt, who now is one of the owners of Emerald Harvest Nutrient. And him and Robert Higgins, they started that, but he was Robert's really close friend. So I got an inside into Advanced Nutrients and one of the owners that nobody else got. And I got to see some really fucking crazy shit, you know, in my early 20s, you know, up in Canada and in California. And I was, you know, helping field, you know, and sell, you know, nutrients. So I sold nutrients for like 3 years and was making 6 figures a year. Had, you know, at the same time, I bought my house, my first house in Sandy, and set up, you know, my first, you know, breeding, you know, rooms and, you know, the Mist. If you follow any of that stuff from back when Sub was covering all that, Gardens of the Mist. So I was doing really, really well as a, you know, kind of crazy mid-20-year-old. And then I eventually got sick of that. And they made up a new position for me because I didn't want to be on the road anymore. So I started training all of the sales staff on the nutrients and how to actually apply them to grow so they can, you know, further customer relationships. Because the advantage that I had when I was a sales rep for Advanced is I grew pot. Most of the other guys just sold shit. And when I'd come to the store, the easiest way to sell pot is be like, yo, see this fire pot? I grew with this shit. Here's how you do it, you know, and then they're smoking, you know, genetics obviously plays a massive role into it. And, you know, my exposure into the hydro industry and the people that I knew gave me access and unfeathered access to always the newest stuff. And when you have the best gear, people want to trade the next best gear. So, you know, I got a lot of different doors open for me at a very young age, but it was up to me to walk through those doors and prove myself. So, then Advanced did, you know, they released $5 million of product into California and Oregon without proper labels. And we called it the replenishment. It was really us saving our asses and replenishing stores. And I did from the Bay all the way up and through Northern California. It was like 90 something stores. And it was 35 days of my life. And it was a really miserable experience. I had a gun pulled on me in Vallejo. I'm trying to come in to get nutrients. And, you know, the dude literally a month and a half before was like, you know, introducing me to Red Man and Method Man. And a month and a half later, and rightfully so, he was like, yo, you're not taking my nutrients. I own this shit. And he's like, if Advanced can't replace it, like, fuck you guys. But we were getting a $10,000 per day fine at that point. So we had to get the shit. So I ended up giving this guy like just all this nutrient. Like I took 13, 14 grand worth of nutrients. I gave him $30,000 worth of shit. But if I took X, Y, and Z off your shelf, I may have only had Y and X and was missing all the other stuff. So, you know, then when I got back from that, I started again in Oregon doing it. And after I finished Oregon, I pretty much left my job and started my own hydro store. And at that same time period is when I got, you know, the farm that everyone sees on Instagram. The 18th of this month is the 11th year mark that we broke ground up here. So, you know, Rex newer, but, you know, I'm this company and this business and this farm is not new to Canis by any means. Before rec happened, we already had 96 cards stacked up here, and we were servicing the Oregon metal community to the best of our abilities. And then rec hit, and not realizing it then, being able to identify it is, I'm super competitive, and I've been in this for a long time, and saw a lot of people coming in from outside, and was like, fuck that. Like, I want to be a facilitator of what goes on in Oregon, because without, guys like me and guys like the originals, we wouldn't have an industry, and now there's all these outside investors, and hey, we need investors. I wouldn't be where I'm at without some of my own partners, and it's the massive amount of capital it takes. But it's a marriage and a relationship that to do a lot of this stuff, you need capital. But I wasn't willing to lose at my own game, so I decided that I'm going to play the game and go for it. And it's been one hell of a ride, and it hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been fun. Everything that I've ever done, I've been zoned out multiple times for extraction licenses, a power upgrade that was supposed to take 6 to 8 months and be a couple $100,000 was 3.5 years and 7 figures, which I still am perplexed on how we got through that. Largest residential power upgrade in the history of my town. But it's something that I'm passionate about. I love. And, the thing for me is, when we started this, it was all about what we were smoking on, and, and the sharing in the experience and taking pride in what, you pull out that bag, and, that's your work and that's your showmanship. So, cannabis just has been always part of, my life. Growing up as the youngest kid, and just kind of the society and the way of the 90s and early 2000s is getting high. And I always liked getting high, and I was able to fortunately, make a career and life out of it. And it was one of those things that at time periods, I've had a lot of people in my family go from you're going to jail to I'm like the family shaman and one of the most successful ones of my siblings. And is it, a mother's dream? Maybe not, but my mom's awesome. And she's got a tattoo artist, a pot grower, and a contractor as her 3 boys. And I think she's proud of all of us for who we are and what we do. And I just try to run my business strategically, from a place of, just trying to treat people how we want to be treated, and try to provide a good product for the consumer that it isn't going to take me being a salesman to sell it. It's just open the jar and use your senses, and if you like the experience, what it looks like, tastes like, smells like, hopefully you come back for more. And fortunately, through the relationships and the things that I've learned, we've been able to cultivate that product to be able to deliver to the community.
Man, that's a mouthful there. And an amazing story. I've got tons of respect for you. You've done so much in the community, and I just kind of want to pick back or rewind back to kind of where I was introduced to you. It was the coverage from Sub initially is where I kind of if I remember right, he was showing your garden. It was like, and it was all. You were the first one, if I can remember correctly, to like have your lights all on a winch. You remember it was.
So what I did,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you see all this new high tech shit, I just kind of chuckle. Like some of the new gardens that people are building, like straight up, I'm still bootstraps. Like I would love to have some of that technology. And be able to afford all the new LEDs and all the new crazy shit. But when we did, the Garden of Mist indoor, I built, at 24 years old, my dream garden. And I had sun sheets specially made, which is the reflective material in your light. And I had them cut to 4x8, and we lined the whole room with them. So my room was a giant reflector. That was like my key signature. And we had aluminum square stock, and we cut holes in it, and we did the sidebars, and then we wired the whips of the lights up into them, and then they came out of the back, and they were all in the electrical winch system. That was in 2009, and it was awesome. The Lumitechs were like the big thing at the time. The purple ones had just come out, so it was 28 Lumitechs all on the winch. We had our own custom tray stands built, because tray stands, there was no fast fit tray stand back then. Excuse me. There was no fast fit tray stand back then. rolling benches weren't a thing. ACs were really just becoming popular in our industry because it was air cooled before that. But because of my exposure up in Canada, they were all open ended and were all about ACs. So, I took a lot of the things that I learned from Canada and brought them down to the States because the truth was at the time, Canada was a little ahead of us in terms of cultivation, especially large scale cultivation. Some of the things that I was exposed to were large scale, like, then you get into California, and California is always bigger and better, and so when people are like, I'm the biggest, I'm like, no, you're not. Go to California. But yeah, that garden, I built my dream garden. Sub and I met through Dioxide, Joel. Um, and how I met Sub is he was basically at Mark Hare, Jack's son. He was at the Third Eye, which is Mark's head shop, doing a book signing after Jack's passing. And Mark was like pretty much very upset because he didn't have Jack Hare and didn't have the seeds. Sensi Seed Bank lost the original parents. So you can get Jack Hare, but it's not the original seed stock from way back when. And I had the original Jack Hare from a guy from Tim, the owner of Bend and Bloom, that I got in 2008, and it was like the legit real cut. And so Dioxide hit me up and asked if I would share it with Sub, and I did. And he gave it back to Mark. So inherently, I circled back and gave that to Mark, which I've given it to Mark, I think, 3 or 4 times now over the years. And that's how I met Sub. And I was very close with Joel. And so Joel basically, wanted to team up with and bring me in and I wanted to breed. And Joel kind of helped facilitate, me breeding originally. And, just gave me some very, beginner instructions. And I read, the Breeder's Bible, and it's trial and error and test experiment. And that's when basically we were going to Amsterdam and he was doing all of the Attitude seed promotion out of my greenhouse. So, that iconic picture with the huge plant behind Sub with the green glasses, that was in my greenhouse. And that was the California O. You were saying you had that in the back. That's kind of chuckling.
What a coincidence.
But
Sorry.
no, but so yeah, that's what that plant was in the background. They referred to it as Melvin back then, but that's what made a lot of that citrus for them. But that's how I kind of met and built my relationship with Sub. And when the first Cannabis Cup happened in the United States at the Terra in California, I mean, I was there. I built Sub's booth with Joel, and we drove all the way from Oregon, the two of us, and Sub and Jill came down. They flew down, and we were out in the middle of fucking outside, and people were like, "Sub who?" Nobody knew who the fuck TGA was, and it was Vortex One, but they had renamed it God's Pussy. And so there were some upset feelings from Sub about the shit being renamed. And I mean, God's Pussy. It's like that's really okay. But and then over the next 4 years, Sub put a lot of fucking work in, and he put himself out there hard. And at the time, because my hydro store, and it wasn't when he put me on the cover of Weed World, unknowingly to me, I was shitting my pants because it was like, yeah, he works at Advanced Nutrients, he lives in the foothills of Mount Hood, and his name's Pat. It's like and I wasn't necessarily great to have the reputation that I did back then, because I had a lot of friends go to jail. I mean, I watched friends leave my house and get hemmed up, and friends get hemmed up, and I'm the last person they talk to. And the arrest period, knock on wood, mine's none, but loose lips sink ships, and it was not the industry that I grew up in. We were still in that mentality where you lived within your circle, and as things progressed, my circle got bigger and I got bigger, and the word got out, and made myself nervous. I mean, it's we all know what we're gambling with. It's still a Schedule 1, federally illegal narcotic. But the way that I look at it is, I'm not hurting anybody. I provided, countless of jobs for countless of people. I provided medicine for cancer patients and people that need cannabis. I've helped, countless of thousands of growers in their own gardens, and their success with my success. And it's something that it was always a way that I was able to give back. And it was, a skill set that I had. And if what I used to like about Instagram is, oh, you got powdery mildew, dude. Like, I'm not gonna hit you up and blast you on your post, but like maybe on your DM, I'll slide through and like, yo, you can do this, this, and this. And now people see, a problem and they're like, oh, fuck that guy. He had mites or thrips. It's like, yo, show me a grower that does not have bugs, and I'll show you a fucking liar. Because any of the real people out here at large scale cultivation, fucking from DNA, from Wilcox to fucking cookies to any of these real facilities that run real big fucking crops have bugs. And that's why it's called IPM. It's integrated pest management. There's no such thing as not having pests. Now there's better practices than others, but the way that people belittle each other on social media is one of the reasons that I fucking hate it these days. But it can also be it's how you keep up on technology. That's how people know about Heroes of the Farm. So, through my story and why you've seen me post less in the last year is I kind of got offered for a while just because it was sucking up my time and I didn't feel like I was doing anything positive with it. But I also know it's beneficial to my company, and I also want to share my personal, authentic experience and let you know that, like, yo, it's not all fucking peaches and cream. And you can look from the outside and be like, oh, he's lucky or this and that, but I mean, it's a 365-day a year job. And I've made a lot of money and I've lost a fuckload of money. And, we're coming through a new industry where, at points I've been in over my head, but, it's balancing out. And, when you're in your 20s, you think that you're a grown ass adult, and you realize in your 30s, you actually hit maturation. And I've done a lot of foolish shit in my life. But, we're living in a time period where we literally are the ones founding the end of a prohibition. And to be in this sector of time in the history of the planet is pretty fucking awesome. So if I can't sit back and be appreciative to where I fall at today, especially at my age, because like I'm not, one of the old OGs that have been doing, for 3 decades, which I'm friends and have mentors that, have been growing weed since 1978 that have, lent experience to me that is, I could not be more grateful for. But I have been doing this for 16 years this year, and I was able to get on the grassroots of Oregon. And because the positions that I put myself in and got lucky enough to have the opportunity to be in, it set me up for, a great future for something that, I genuinely love. Now, do we have our days? We all have them. I don't care what you do.
So, what actually made you want to go down the avenue to start producing genetics versus, just producing flour for extract or whatever? I kind of think I know the answer here, but
creation. When working at the hydro store and one of the first things we were just talking about earlier, going to the 20th High Times Cup in Amsterdam. I've been to 4 different Amsterdam Cups. Gray area had the best weed. DNA at the time, some younger dudes, they're a decade older, they're 10 years older than I am. But, there's these younger California cats that in my eyes were crushing it. And when I went to Amsterdam, this is no ego thing. Like I got the High Times judges pack, and it was like, oh, I'm a cannabis judge, and they give you a pamphlet and they're like, go to 23 dispensaries, and if you get every entry, you're going to spend $3,000 custody. And I was that custody, and I did that. And straight up, 90% of the shit that I got, there was better weed in Oregon and there was better weed in my house. And it wasn't just my cultivation, it was the genetic access that I had to even back then. And I just, I was like, yeah, I'd love to make my own genetics. And then when I linked up with Joel, he was like, well, let's do this shit. And within a couple of months, we were kicking things off. And that's when, him and Sub gave me Space Dude as my first male. And that's kind of how, Heroes was always separate from TGA. TGA and Sub distributed all my shit. And why Sub, Sub took credit for a lot of my stuff over the years because I told him to, because I didn't want my face in there. And then when I wanted, I was like, yo, dude, like where we started to have, a little bit of friction is when, Locomotion, I made that. I created that. He had nothing to do with it. They didn't even knew it fucking existed. And his original name was Blue Steel. Supposed to be some ridiculously good looking pot. and now Exotic Mike has some blue steel. But I came up with, if you look at the original packaging, the one out was blue steel. And I'm looking at fucking, Weed World, and there's not even a mention of fucking Heroes of the Farm in it. And same thing with Conspiracy Kush. And, that's when Sub and I kind of had our first arguments, which, it is what it is. There's a lot of egos and a lot of bullshit back then, in the way of, just not knowing how to properly communicate as men and as a group. And that was kind of, I think, TGA's downfall in terms of a lot of the breeders, from Homegrown to Dioxide to me to, Sub was an absolute great dude, but in some of the communication skills and assets, the ego can get in the way of any man or woman. But when I look at why I got into breeding, it was I wanted to have my own shit. I wanted to create my own stuff. I wanted to hunt my own stuff. I smuggled, seeds from Amsterdam for a couple of years, and I'd get a couple $1,000s worth of seeds, and you'd pop them, and it just wasn't what I wanted, what I was looking for, and it's just a cool experience. Now to be a decade into it, I can open up a library, in my safe, and it's this times this back cross with this, and shit that people don't even know about. That I've got probably 110 different creations that I've created, over the last decade. And the way that I've always worked is primarily selling seeds wasn't what I was focused on. It was more like I'm making seeds and I get to sell some of them. But the way Sub had us do rigorous testing back then was I had to test all of my seeds in multiple environments and scenarios through multiple people before we could release them. Now it's just like there's fucking breeders everywhere, and there's people doing great shit. We all fucking chuck pollen, right? At some point, you're chucking pollen to make your first creation. And some people have different ethics. And, I personally don't like to make something and release it to the world, especially with the internet, because with hybridization and with cannabis, hermaphrodism is something that happens. And some things, like the space candy is an example. I didn't want to release space candy. Sub gave out a bunch of those packs, and all these testers were like, yo, this is the shit. I thought there was too many phenotypical variations in it, which there was. Now, he decided after a bunch of testing beyond me that, hey, we're going to release it. And he did. And him and Jill did. And you know what? There's a lot of people, especially up in Maine, where it seems like a lot of it went. A lot of my home state people supported me on that. And there's some absolute amazing things out there. But was I happy about the variation through it? No, like that wasn't one that I was like super stoked on. And there's things that I've created that there's
kind of funny you say that, because that's one of my all-time favorites, to be honest with you. I've 15 about 15 seeds of it. I still have a 5-pack on backup just in case, but it was always beautiful flower. I mean, picturesque, beautiful, and just super candy.
Yeah, well, that cotton candy. Yeah, the cotton candy kush that it came from, I love that weed. The problem with cotton candy kush, though, is it would grow these buds that were like absolutely massive. But then when they dried, you'd come in your room and you'd be like, who the fuck robbed me? Like, where'd all my weed go? And then you just have like these little sticky colas. And it was, I grew it for years. We hunted it, and I mean, we did a bunch of testing. I just, but once it was out further, and I'm glad it got released, and I'm glad people got to experience. I think I have like maybe 10 or 12 of those seeds left, and it's not ever going to get created again, and that's what's special about some of this stuff. And it's sad that Sub's gone, and, it's unfortunate, but there's stuff that people have, in their gardens and seeds that are out there that, that man's still living in this industry and around. And that was his mission and his goal. Overall, if I look back as an adult, in the experience and the friendship that we got to have, and that what TJ was, that man helped every person, even if there was beefs and fallouts, there's not one of the people from Odie to Sonny to myself to Jill to Joel. He helped us all, and we helped him, and we had a good thing going for a while. And I think that his mission was to get out there and show people how to grow dank, and he lived his mission, and he bumped the internet and forums, and he put more time into what he does than most people, and that's including some of the big dogs, because a lot of the big dogs, they're not on forums all day. That guy's was on forums from like the 90s on. So
Some of my other favorites from that era were I told you this off the air too, but one of my other favorites besides space candy were girl time. Girl time was one of my other all-time favorites out of that tester area. That thing stayed around forever. I do not have backup seeds of that one, but that is wait, I don't think I do.
Yeah,
But that was fire. And jazz was another one that was another amazing creation. That thing, jazz just yielded. It was a good, a tasty strain, but that thing just yielded out of control. That was one of my favorites about that one. But Girl
and both
Time and Space Candy were both picturesque, covered in trichomes. If I had it, that's what everybody wanted was either one of those two. So shout out on those, man. Amazing.
oh, thank you. And both of those, have good stories behind them. The Girl Scout cookie space dude, Girl Time. Um, you know, that's the original form Girl Scout cookies, and crossed with his space dude, and he was not into cookies, and we argued about it, and I was like, just fucking give him out as testers, release them. Like we don't have to sell them, whatever. And he ended up, sending out a bunch of testers, and I was right on that one. And Sub back then though, he didn't like OGs, he didn't like gas. Before he passed, he had changed his mind about some of those things. But back then he was all about fruit and old school profiles. That Cinderella 99 times Romulan. That was kind of that was he was just older guy and like those older profiles. With the jazz, that's the original Raspberry Kush times the Galactic Jack. Sure as shit, I popped, I think it was like 30 Galactic Jack seeds. And there was just this one absolutely beautiful plant that had a broader leaf structure for, being a Jack Herer cross. And of course it was a male. And of course it was a male. And I was like, son of a bitch. So I was making a batch. That was the round I was making locomotion and those time rack crosses that from the male that Ray gave me. And I had just flowered that other male. So when one male went into this room, I grabbed a female plant in the other room, and I did one plant of raspberry that I hit with that Galactic Jack, and that's what made that jazz. So that was just a one-time creation where I got rid of the male after, and we Big Beard Farm still grows jazz. We still have at my other farm jazz. I still have some seeds of it. Um, it was the blend of the original Raspberry Kush that we blew up, and times the original Jack Hare. And they were both at the time two cultivars that really helped build my brand. It wasn't even a brand, just it helped me medically in terms of having really good fucking pop back then. So it was kind of just a complement of each other. So it was cool to recreate those, and you get expressions from both parents. Jack being very dominant, you'll get almost this Kush like structure, but with a Jack nose. And the thing about that Raspberry Kush, there's some of if you look at peach rings, that's Marionberry, and then peach rings OZ, it's a pheno of Marionberry, and peach rings OZ is Marionberry, that pheno times Eddie Lep OG. But when you look at third gen, they were like when he first got into it, and like I remember us all meeting, Brandon got from another buddy, he ended up getting a cut of Marionberry and renaming it Peach Rings and started winning cups with it. Great pot, absolutely, and great things have happened with it. And to see, it's kind of crazy to see like what happens in a garage or in a basement or in a bedroom, and then it just ripple out into the universe. It's a humbling thing. People get mad about genetics all the time, and I've been caught up in my own about, oh, they're recreating this or they fucked me on that or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, none of us are the creators of cannabis. We are, basically furthering it and passing it along. So we're more of a steward to the plant, and that's our responsibility. So if someone wants to take and make creations with my stuff, I love seeing people like, oh, like I saw like this Hitman OG from a Hawaiian company that it was 8541 times something from DNA. I can't remember. That shit excites me. I think it's cool. Sometimes people send me seeds of it, and I've got a library of, stuff that people have created with my stuff, and they'll hit me up, and, um, I've got a lot of seeds to pop, so I haven't got around to all of it, but I definitely have a sweet collection. I'm always humbled by people, thinking that the things that I've created are good enough to continue.
I have a problem with back crosses myself, to be honest with you. A lot of recreations, I should say. Just recreations in general. It's sometimes if the seed's not available, maybe, and you have some, and it's for sustainability for your own sake. All right, go for it. Knock yourself out. But when it comes to like recreation for sale, I have a problem with it because, like a lot of, like you're saying, the credit usually isn't dealt where it should be dealt. And basically, what my problem is with the recreations is when they don't have the vision that you created in a pheno selection. So, how can they accurately recreate a strain that, they don't have your notes, they don't have your pheno selection types? It's hard to recreate a strain when you don't have the initial insight that was, you know,
Well,
going into it. So that's,
what's the
I'm
purpose
sorry,
of the
go ahead.
project? And I completely agree. If you're going straight recreation, and that's, I mean, why I beefed with Sub and his old partner Will, and why I got my Instagram taken for like almost, I don't know, 6-8 months. Will openly told me pretty much that they're recreating my shit and to go fuck myself. And he was like posted online and like literally like made this whole thing about it on his page. And I reposted it. And then he got attacked because that's what the internet does. And I'm stubborn as fuck, and he begged me to take it down, and I wouldn't. And we both fought in the schoolyard of IG and got our accounts taken. I ended up getting mine back after fucking pleading and like, but it was during that algorithm where the boom was like really traveling, and since getting it back, it's just stayed at like 87,000 or whatever, which I don't really care. But that was a lesson in itself of like, why bring that shit to the playground, you know what I mean? But I grew up in an era of like, you told me to do it. So I think that if you're going to take someone's genetics and then recreate them and just sell them, you're a fucking asshole. I think if you want to take some genetics and I really like this genetic of yours, and I really like this GMO over here, or I really like this whatever, and I want to make something of my own, have at it. I think that's the coolest shit. Every breeder was born that way, and it's never too late to become a breeder. It's never too late to make something out of creation purposes for yourself, to have something unique to separate yourself. So the continual creation is something great, but like if you're literally like, I'm gonna make, head dog, or I'm gonna make, whatever it is, I'm gonna go make, Jack the Ripper. Um, yeah, and then I'm gonna go sell it, and no, that's not ethical. But I think there's an ethical way to do it, and I've had multiple people, my buddy Nelson, Poetry of Plants, person I really respect, got a bunch of gear from me. Before he ever did anything with it, he hit me up and was like, "Hey man, like I'd like to do this. Can I do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah." And then he was like, "I'll share some of the seeds with you." So he made, Maxine, the Atomic Collider. He made a couple different ones. And he kicked me down seeds of it. He brought, Mad Max to an F2. So in scenarios like that, that's flattering. And a lot of the time, and listen, I've worked with shit that I shouldn't have worked with in the past and got myself in trouble, and had to then own up and be like, "Yo, sorry, I did that. Like, I knew I shouldn't have, but I did. So like, what do you want me to do with the seeds type deal?" We all make mistakes and shit, but there's ways to do it ethically. And I think if you're going to want to work with someone's work, what up, son? What's up, dog? I think if you're going to work with someone else's work, it's kind of can be a common courtesy. Like, hey, I'd like to do this. You cool with that? 9 times out of 10, people are going to be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I support you. And if you're not selling something and you're not trying to like recreate it to distribute, do whatever the fuck you want. I mean, it's, as they'd say, this is, whatever your religious belief is, but Isn't this like God's plant or whatever?
I agree 100% with that, especially on the will front there. Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I'm just going to drop the ball right there. The, you should be working on your own cred, not off somebody else's. When that's but as far as like recreation and working with your strains, I'm excited about tissue culture these days because that's going to save a lot of the bullshit. You as a breeder, wanting to be able to move forth and not, you can tissue culture stuff. You ever want to bring stuff back, you can bring it back and reproduce it accurately if you wanted to someday. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm kind of hoping that will slow down some of the bullshit back crossing going on, as far as that goes. But as far as like stuff being created with your strains, I think them packs should be, read correctly when it lays out the genetics. It should say, this strain was created by, this strain and girl time from a great strain provided by, heroes of the farm. There's no harm in, if you're going to work with that strain, to tip your hat to the breeder or
Yeah.
whoever, produced it.
Well, and
That's fair enough, I believe.
I think you're right there too, and I think that there's, you know, example head dog. Jai renamed it the Flan, and then people thought all of a sudden it was some cookie shit. The Flan is head dog number 7. My idea. I bred it. I hunted it. I shared it with his partner Ned Fossil. Now, I didn't care that he renamed it, but when I went to when him and I met up and we talked, I was like, "Yo, this awesome, fucking beautiful picture." You go back a couple years, you'll see it on my Instagram. And I was like, "Head dog, aka the Flan." And then it caused all this drama and shit. And he was curating a Baywood cookies menu, and it was kind of procured as like their shit, which it wasn't. And it's head dog. It's not the Flan. Now I'll call it the Flan because the cookies family has clout, but it's head dog. It's the original headband times Guinness, my dog, and Alpha and all the other dog names were taken, but head dog wasn't. So that's where that name was born. Now, do I respect what the fuck out of those dudes have done as a brand and what they've built? Yeah, I'm not. I got nothing bad to say about them at all. And I've had multiple people, for a lot of the big industry names take and rename shit. And, listen, the name's the name, and if there's a different phenotype, it's still the fucking name of the plant. So if you're like, hey, this is Tyra Banks, it's like, no, that's Conspiracy Kush, not Tyra Banks because you wanted to rename it. But I get it. I've seen people take, and some of it too is that hype shit. Like, example, I had a buddy that nobody wanted Jack Harrer anymore. He changed the name to St. John Skunk, and they couldn't get enough of it. Same fucking buyers. People are dumb. So yeah, I just think if you're gonna work with someone's shit, there's like the boxes to check. Like, first off, don't rename it. Second off, don't do an exact replica recreation and then try to sell it. And third off, you don't have to do it, but if you do plan on maybe like, I'm going to sell a bunch of this shit, hit them up, But also, that being said, as a breeder, as soon as you release anything into the world, it's gone. So you shouldn't be so attached to something and so upset about something if you're willing to let it go to a friend or for another consumer for $1. Because at the end of the day, we have no control on what others do. So, I can see it from all sides of perspective, and I really try not to get hung up on what other people are doing with my shit. In the past, I have gotten hung up on that, but what I realized through experience and just through aging and growing up is if I'm focused and worried about what that person's doing with my shit, that means I'm not focused enough and staying in my own lane and being creative with myself for the future. So I shouldn't worry about what anyone's doing. I should be focused on what I'm doing. So, all all different ways and aspects to look at it. But, I've had all of the above happen, and I've been guilty of some of those things. But at the end of the day, like when I started breeding, it's not like I got some pot that I created that, someone else created. This plant has been for decades and decades and for thousands of years being passed and honed in it's as they say in the botany of desire, plants make people do crazy things.
Right on. And very wise words, by the way. Very wise words about not necessarily focusing on the bullshit behind you. That's a very, very accurate statement. Very accurate statement. So what are some of the things that you're excited about currently with Heroes of the Farm? What's out there, or could be out there soon that we should be looking out for?
We got a bunch of shit going on. Our lab, after 4 years of bullshit, is finally open. We're jumping through the last few hoops of control studies. So before you can release your first SKUs, for every SKU you release into the Oregon market, you have to do a control study. And then once you do the control study, you have basically a 2-year period, and then you just do all your testing and release that out. So realistically, by the end of this month, probably in the next 2-3 weeks, we will have extract out into the Oregon market for the first time of recreational. We are not new to extraction, and we are not new to the Oregon market with extraction or medical dispensaries. But we got zoned out, and then we had to play the game. So we're finally up and operable there. So that's exciting. Hanging, another 64 lights. We had switched over and made a shitload of hemp seeds over the last couple of years and did mass scale hemp seed production. And we just switched all of our greenhouses back over to THC, which took some time with the OLCC to get our licensing flipped back around. So we just fired up 4 more greenhouses in the last 2 weeks. We're doing 2 greenhouses of auto THC seeds for the Oregon recreational market. We'll probably be the first one to offer auto THC inside of the Oregon recreational market for large scale acreage. Just trying to be kind of the first on that. Working with my partner, Nick Strumberg, out of California with a bunch of his auto lines. So working on that. This spring, we've Mushmouth, Donnie from Homegrown Natural Wonders. Him and I did a project with the Irish Stout, which is Red Rocket times Guinness. So we've got about 15 new creations that we're going to be massively hunting that you'll be seeing. I'll probably start that in I pop the seeds here in about another month and a half and get that going for the season. So I'm excited for the hunt, and then got another couple of breeding projects going on right now where, we're going to make cherry truffle. I don't know if you've seen the white truffle, but we're going to make cherry truffle and a bunch of other cherry stout crosses. Nick and I and my other partner have feminized a bunch of lines. So we are starting Heroes Journey, which is basically kind of a subsidiary of Heroes of the Farm, but based out of kind of our Cali nursery to be able to service the California market for large scale seed production with feminized lines. So 8541 and Cherry Stout have been the donors, and we've had multiple different receivers, GMO, Hair of the Dog, Muscovian, Dead Prez. There's a, oh shit, thank you. There's a laundry list of them. But for me, before I'll really want to sell any of this shit, I've got to grow it all myself. I got to make sure it checks the boxes for myself first. And I like to give myself a run at things. I don't necessarily I grew a shitload of cherry stout and made it popular before I wanted to release it. And then I did limited drops for, a little bit more money and strategically released it out in the world because it needs to get out in the world. But I've had my time period with it. So now with whatever anyone does with it, hey, I've had my day in the sun with it. So go have yours. So those are some of the projects that I'm excited about, but I know there's always more shit that comes up, but definitely looking forward to this year's hunt. We didn't, because of all last year's hemp breeding, we were still breeding, THC seeds, but I didn't get to do a big hunt. And the last couple of years we've hunted, usually we hunt anywhere from 6 to 8,000 plants over, 12 to 20 varieties. And that's where you see all this new stuff come out of. And it goes through rigorous testing, mold and mildew resistance, and terpene profile, numbers at the time, the last time we did a big hunt were very important, because in Oregon, there was a time period where it didn't matter what your pot looked like. They were like, hey, send me your test results. I want to see if it's 30%. And, that got rid of a lot of good genetics in our state. And it's sad that, people started shopping based on paperwork versus using their senses, because there's a lot of good pot that's not very strong if you look at paperwork, but maybe some of the most effective things for the person. So, it's nice to see that market kind of redirect itself, and, the Oregon market restabilize through oversaturation and overproduction, and new growers, and figuring out mass scale agriculture. There's a lot of bad shit out there. And yeah, there was like fucking, I don't know how many extra countless of thousands of pounds in the system at a point, but dog shit's dog shit. If it's not going to sell, it's not going to sell. So Oregon markets, finally, the pandemic has been very weird, obviously, but it's been actually pretty amazing for cannabis in the nation, especially, in Oregon and California. People are with stay at home orders and no jobs. They like to get high. So the market has restabilized. Good weed's always going to sell, and it's nice to see the growers that were able to make it, especially, some of the homies, to be able to thrive again, because we've worked hard to be here. So it's nice to see that dispensaries are not trying to purchase weed based on $1, but they're trying to, purchase weed based on constant, consumer quality.
Bro, I haven't been asked a number in a year. I haven't been asked a THC number in a year.
So my buddy that works for me and is my partner, he said he hasn't been asked for a THC number in a year, which that's all we used to get. Here, see. So it's nice to see that turn around, because it got brutal there for a while. I mean, when you looked at from the prices of outdoor from 16 to 17, there was $1,000 difference per pound, and it did not cost the grower $1,000 less to produce it. Uh-oh. Did we freeze? Hello. Uh-oh, you froze. Right there.
Oh, thank goodness.
All right.
Thank goodness.
So,
yeah, it froze up on my end. Sorry about that, buddy.
No, it's all good. I got the shittiest internet service ever, so I was like, is it me?
It always happens on the real great episodes too. This being one. So I can't help but, it impresses me, and it makes me a little bit curious to hear you what I would consider a larger scale breeder to be talking about autos. So do you think what are your thoughts on autos? Are we there that we should be kind of keeping our eye out for? I mean,
Well,
obviously,
what's your goal?
Like you're doing some work.
So it depends on what your goal is. You know what I mean? If you're looking at large scale agriculture for extraction, my partner Nick Stromberg has spent the last many years actually getting the numbers up, getting everything to be more uniform, and capturing different terpene profiles. So are autos getting there? Yeah, there's autos that are testing in the 20s. If you're looking at just from a turn and burn for large scale field, and greenhouse, where you necessarily don't want to be photo dependent and you're going for straight extraction, I think the juice is totally worth the squeeze. If you're doing, where I'm at, if I was going to do an acre of outdoor up in the foothills here, my only real option for a successful harvest, to be truthful, it would be autos. And so now is it quite as good of a flower structure and end product as a traditional, like, nice photoperiodic plant? It's not quite 100% there, no. But if you're looking like, hey, I'm growing for my extraction company and I'm growing for these purposes, and I'm growing for yield, which, that's a large variable for a lot of these larger companies, to be able to hit the SKUs to meet demand, then yeah, I think that they have a big future, especially if you're looking at some of these large scale facilities that are getting converted. An example is, say you have, a 10-acre facility that used to grow orchids that had the shade cloths, but now you're producing, you're trying to light dep them and you're switching all that out. You're going to spend millions just to control a photo period. As that system is shutting to get dark, to create your 12-12, versus if it can be midsummer and does not matter about your photo cycle. Those plants are going to flower within 3 to 4 weeks of germination. And you're talking a 75 to 90-day crop. And you're talking no plant maintenance. So because you've got seed vigor, you're not having to use a bunch of IPM techniques. And you're not, growing these big plants, to then thin up and trim and over touch and over manicure. It's just boom, pop them, go, turn them, buck them, shuck them, off to the freezers or the dryers, to be able to turn into extract. And yeah, I think that they definitely have their place in large scale production and in the models that are being created in today's society.
I've also been quoted about saying that I think they're going to play an effect for geological purposes too. I honestly think, like, in some areas, like in the breadbasket there, where we get the tornado zones, it would be wise to, like, in areas like that, if they went for autos, a short season before the hurricane or tornado season, and then another one after, versus risking a whole photo period crop during that season. Or the same thing like down in the Florida areas, where they have multiple seasons. I think autos would come into play well down in them areas too. So I think the geological area in itself will play into the autos big time, I think.
Yeah, and autos have been around, and I remember going to the Cups in Amsterdam back in the day when Barney's and those guys were really, like, Barney's probably done some of, like, the most auto work back in the day, but back then, as Americans, we weren't hip to what those motherfuckers were doing, and they were blowing shit up like hard as fuck in the Netherlands and in other countries, Spain. There's a lot of places that were growing auto THC, and they were selling them as a lower end flower. But I know guys that have done really, really well with autos. Is it a lower grade product? Absolutely. But if you just grew 2,000 pounds on an acre and you sold those $600 a pound, you name a crop that is even comparable in this world to that, I'll be waiting. So is it the heady fucking dope indoor? No, that's not what the purpose that they serve is.
So just kind of checking in with you a little bit. Before we kind of started, you were allotting me about an hour. How are we doing on time? Should I be worried about wrapping it up, or I see you do have company?
I got a couple buddies over. I can do a couple more minutes, and then I'll probably have to bounce out. But I definitely give you a couple more.
All right. Well,
Equatorial.
More than national, international, places is important.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and that's one of the things that my buddy behind us is, he was saying equatorial, just in a lot of wetter climates and places, like you were saying, Florida, but just all over the world, they're going to serve their purpose. And a lot of this stuff that's happening right now, it's being extracted. There's a large market, and we're going to continue to see different forms of consumables come in as science and technology and innovation continues to happen. I mean, we've watched and witnessed, fucking dabs come in, and there was slabs and batter and diamonds, and now there's just the tech. It's like computers in the 90s and the Silicon Valley boom. You're just going to continue to see massive innovation, not only genetically speaking with, if you look at like some of the stuff that the Crawfords are doing with hemp, with CRISPR system and gene sequencing, and the technologies of today catching up with what is probably going to be, it is, the largest cash crop in the world. We're going to start putting the money into said research to really figure this shit out. And that's what's exciting, is to see science and technology and all of it kind of marry together. So, I think we're going to continue to see really, really neat things.
So I guess I got much respect. Tony from Galactic Gardens is kind of wanting me to ask. Is there any plans? I know what you're getting at. He's talking about the secret there. Is there any plans for some of the unreleased testers that were TGA to ever make the light of day?
Yeah, so actually one of the things with the secret, I'm going to rename that. That was one of the things that I shouldn't have bred that plant, and I did. And then I basically ate shit and fucking talked to Tommy and apologized and was like, what do you want me to do with these? And it's like, I won't sell them. And I didn't. And he was like, you know what, dude? He's like, he told me the story about like, hey, the guy that I got it from said, don't ever pass it out. And he goes, so I'm just trying to respect that guy. So that's my gig. And I was like, cool. And it was at the Emerald Cup. I don't know, two or 3 years ago. Unfortunately, Tommy's in jail now. So what we were talking about is actually, I was talking with James Bean, which I need to get my shit together. I've been waiting for packaging. I got my packaging. I'm waiting for the foam inserts for Hero's Journey boxes. But basically, I'm going to give a bunch of those particular ones to James to then basically donate that money towards Duke's cause of, getting him some funds for where he's at, because super good dude. Don't like to see anyone hemmed up and in prison. And that dude spent, he didn't rat when he could have, and he spent a lot of time in jail for that. And because of that record, when he got caught, with what happened to him recently a while ago, it's unfortunate. And so I absolutely have, a lot of different things. If you hit up Prestige Worldwide Seeds, those dudes, they've got a bunch of shit. And I'm going to be working with Seeds Here Now. He's been wanting to do this for a couple months now, but I just got a lot of shit going on, and packaging took a little bit of time to come in. So that finally arrived, and now this guy took us 3 weeks to get back to us via email for the stupid foam inserts for the vials of the seeds to sit in. So you're going to see, some of those get released, and then you're going to see coming up, we've got a little bit of it in testing, but I want to get it further out there. But all of those Irish Stout crosses. So Irish Stout, Scooby Snacks, GMO, Locomotion, Scovian, some of the 88G13 hash plant times ISE, which is the interspecies erotica, got hit with Gorilla Snacks. There's a laundry list of them that will be coming out here in the near future. Not directly from me, but you'll be able to get them through a couple different vendors.
Nice. I hope to see a lot of those older strains get released. There was some fire. There. They should be out there being grown. That's for sure. So I'm glad you're putting them back out there. I hope that I can get you back at some point. I know we're going to cut this short. I'd like to get you back and just talk some straight up grow, see what kind of knowledge you can dish out to the community there. I know we would greatly appreciate that. A couple of things before you go, actually 3 things. One, I wanted to compliment you on that amazing ink you have there. I'm a huge fan of ink. I'm probably at half covered. So all night long, I've been appreciating those sleeves you got there. Badass work. Is that one of the brother, I'm guessing, maybe?
Yeah.
That you said you had some
Yep. So my brother Jake, he's the middle brother. Thought Crime Tattoo. Jake Pooler, 1984 is his Instagram handle. He's been tattooing for about 10 years. Cannabis put him through fucking tattoo school. He moved out from the East Coast. He he's definitely whereas we were all shitheads fucking growing up, but he just got caught being a shithead. So he got himself in some trouble, and always an amazing artist. And then he moved out to Oregon after going to RISD. He dropped out of RISD Art School, which is a very prestigious, pretentious school. And he just wasn't into all the rich kids and kind of the vibe of the school. So he bounced and moved out to Oregon and was living on my couch, and basically, asked if I could help him, get into tattoo school. And he went to tattoo school in Portland, and now he's owned his own shop for like eight years now. But he's been tattooing for 10. It might even be 10. He's owned his shop for almost a decade. He focuses, loves photorealism. I've got Albert Hoffman in the corner. You probably can't see it all. It's a fucking weird angle.
That's a fucking bad. He's badass. That's not a big head either. For the detail he's got on that thing's badass.
Yeah, so it's Albert Hoffman with the LSD molecule. So Albert obviously created LSD. My mom, my grandfather. I got Jerry Garcia, Trey Anastasio, and grandma in the back. Then I got a bunch of shit up top too, like Celtic folklore, and I'm blacking out an original tattoo and then going over it with this shit right here. So yeah,
that black's rough. That blackout's rough, man. That shit dries it's like just a dry patch always. I don't know what it is about that black ink, but man, it dries out, right? Them spots dry out big time.
No, there's it's a love-hate where I'm just like, I wouldn't pay for most people to inflict this much pain on me, but I like tattoos. I blame my aunt for giving us those like lick-on tattoos when we were kids, and you'd have them like all over your neck and shit and face. Fucking, I loved the temporary fake tattoos when I was little.
Well, cool. I'll let you get to your company there.
Well,
hopefully
you had 3 things, so I'll give you the other 2. You only gave me 1.
I'm working to it. Basically, what the other 2 are. The other one is, the show is nightly. It goes between 11:30 to 4:20 every night usually. And, it bases on the guests. Sometimes they go long, sometimes they go short. If there's a short episode, then I pick up and go with what I call the wormhole. It used to be the rabbit hole, but now it's the wormhole. And the wormholes open up to past guests. Anybody that's a past guest that wants to jump in and hang out and talk cannabis or whatever. So with that in mind, you're no different than any other past guests. I give you the same invitation that I give them. The Zoom number that you have is the same for all the shows. So if you ever happen to tune in the channel and see a wormhole and you see a guest that you'd like to shoot the shit with, as long as myself, jump in. You don't need an invitation. You don't need to go, hey man, can I jump in? Just come on. We're always honored. And, whoever pops in, it's always like a present. You know what I'm saying? All right, Patrick's here. So it's always, it's always nice to see that. So anytime, and hopefully that we can get you back on, another episode where we dive in a little bit deeper into the grow. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Let's
get something put on the books here in the near future. Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. The last and final thing I'd like to ask you for is probably the more corny thing. Some say I should do it in the beginning to kind of set more of a happier pace through the show, but whatever. It's basically the advertisement for the episode. It's like the old school radio soundbite, and in my words, not yours, it goes something like, "Hey, this is Eagle Gardens, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 315. You can dress it up, make it your own, but that's pretty much what I'm looking for.
All right, so hold on 1 second, because I'm dumb. It's Eagle Gardens. Hey.
No, it's basically, I'd want from you, it's more like, hey, this is Patrick from Heroes of the Farm, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 315.
All right, I'll do that for you. Hey, it's Pat with Heroes of the Farm. And I am on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle Gardens, episode 315. Come check this shit out. Peace.
Thank you, my friend. And again, thank you for donating your time. I have tons of respect for you as much as the community does too. And I will hit you up and hopefully we can schedule something at your leisure. I know you're a busy, busy man. So
And
that's why, again, I'm
it
very
was an
grateful for
absolute
you taking
pleasure,
this
and
time.
we could do this again for sure, man. So all the best, and thank you all for the years of support and kind words. Without everyone in this community, we would definitely not be where we're at and who we are. So we're grateful because it's something that we're passionate about and love. So fucking keep keep things good in these weird, strange times.
Again, all right. Well, again, thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. You can go ahead and just let yourself out. I'm going to kind of close up the show and get ready for the next one. But thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again, sir.
All right, brother. Have a good one. Peace.
Peace. What an amazing episode, Patrick from Heroes of the Farm. Wow, what a nice dude. And man, that garden that I talked about there, the that he referred to, that garden for me when he showed that thing actually set the bar for me back in 2009. I seen that thing, I was like, this guy is killing it, and I've had tons of respect for him ever since. So hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I know I have. Uh, so thank you guys for tuning in. You guys know the routine. If you guys want to come hang out in the wormhole, please do. It would give me about 5-10 minutes, and we'll go ahead and get that fired up. Hopefully, I see a lot of past guests in chat here. Hopefully, you guys, some of you pop on, say hello, talk some shit with me. If not, then thank you guys very much for hanging out up to this point. Uh, much respect to all of you guys. Sorry about the delay the last couple of days, but it is what it is. Back up, running again. So see you guys in a few minutes in the wormhole. You guys know the deal. Please do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. I'm a living, breathing example of that. So take some time, open a door, say something nice. We all need it. I'll see you guys again tomorrow with My Herbs Now at 11:30, telling us about his comeback. But until then, I'll see you guys in about 5-10 minutes in the wormhole. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I am out of here.